Good friend. It's been a bit. Baseball Monthly is our new segment for 24. We may go 6 weeks or so, but it's Adnan Virk with MLB Network.
Ryan, it's great to see you as always, man. It's my annual appearance here on the podcast. And as always, I like to touch base on what I've missed since the last time I was here. So David Graham was fantastic. Loved his insight on Killers of the Flower Moon. Of course, he wrote the book. You and I both interviewed him. I interviewed him on my podcast. The movie was incredible. I still don't understand how your friends didn't like it, because I texted you after Scorsese was nominated. He broke a record, most nominations ever for a Best Director, 10 nominations ahead of Spielberg. And I texted you and you said, congratulations. You said, my friends hated it. And I immediately put a dislike to that comment. And I wanted to say you need to get some new friends. But regardless, I was happy to hear David Grant on your podcast. Secondly, Dan Soder was fantastic. I saw him recently in Manhattan at the Cellar, introduced myself afterwards. He had no idea who I was, but he's very funny. He's very good. Frank Isola, always good on the Knicks. But I want to commend you on ESPN Reunion Week, because Mike Greenberg was last week, and here I am. And there's no chance, by the way, he was on Riverside, because I heard his audio. It was not nearly as good as mine is right now. But Greeny was great. My favorite part of the interview was this. He says the other day, he goes, I talked to Stacey. I don't know the last time I talked to Russillo. You give a genuine, detailed explanation of how it was not 2018. You said, no, I'd left by then. I've already moved. I would fly up once in a while. I would do your show 3 times to stay in the city. I really enjoyed myself. I enjoyed doing your show. We had a great chemistry. It was wonderful. His response to all of that was simply, yeah, it's been a while. He did not want all the explanation you gave. Just like, yeah, okay, what do you got for me? And I'll tell you this. Of all the things I admire about Mike Greenberg, and he's very talented at his job, and I'm glad you mentioned the teases and the bosses love all this. What I admire most about him is how filthy rich he is. And I love the fact he commented on it, because he even said himself, when you asked him about what jobs he would go to, he said, well, when I started the job 29 years ago, whatever it was, 27 years ago, my daughter was this age, my son was this age, my daughter's now out of college, my son's a junior, and I've made a lot of money since then. I'm like, yeah, the Green Man, for good reason, has definitely taken it to the house. So I really enjoyed the interview. It was excellent.
All right, man. We'll talk to you in July.
Oh, also of note, the fact that this is also what I had for you. I have life advice before we get into the baseball. What do you do when a friend big times you? Cerruti, please chime in. By the way, the great Steve Cerruti, he and I have been texting about his beloved Magic. As he pointed out, disappointing first-round exit, but still a successful season. Cerruti, you can chime in. What do you do when your buddy Russillo big times you? So I went to Los Angeles for the Critics' Choice Awards, hung out with the great Ben Lyons, got to meet Paul Giamatti, one of my favorite actors, wonderful human. Check out his podcast, Chinwag, which is great. I texted Russillo. We had talked it the week previous, the Norby issues, which, by the way, you asked. Here's my only note to you. So you made a joke to Greeny about it. He gave you a genuine answer, and then you backtracked and go, hey, I actually didn't want an answer. I was just kidding around. No, you should have got in. Like, okay, if you're going to give me an answer, I'll go more. What else you got on Norby? What else you got on Mac? Like, I think Mike was open to the conversation. He's like, okay, sure. You naturally make him uncomfortable, as he said. He enjoys that. Anyways, Cerruti, here's the thing. I talked to Russillo about Norby, the whole situation. I said, I'm coming to L.A. Ryan goes, hit me up. Let's do this. It's been 5 years. Me and Ben are up for dinner Saturday. I texted you. I go, hey, this is where we're at. Now, I get it. It's L.A. It's tough to move around. I totally recognize that. Where you are in relation to areas, I think I was Venice Beach. This was the response from you. Won't be able to make it up there. Think Woj is coming over. He's staying across the street. Cerruti, it would have been better if he had simply said, I'm busy. I have games to watch. I have a podcast. No problem. Once he dropped the Woj bomb, I was like, all right.
That's a legitimate excuse, though. That's a legit excuse.
You think that's a legit excuse? I haven't seen the guy in 5 years. He can't make 1 hour for me. But okay, Woj is coming over, but let's get breakfast tomorrow. I'll come to Venice Beach. We'll get a lift in, whatever you want.
It's a shame Kyle is not on the Zoom yet here, because he'd be the better guy to answer this question, having been probably big time by Ryan many times. But they did just hang out. They did just hang out. They went to see our guy Shane Gillis. So that is over now. But
nice.
We both love Ryan. We'll just throw that out there before this.
Of course.
I just don't get offended when Ryan does this stuff anymore. I just don't. Like, the last time I was in LA, I think we were going to do something. I was going to go maybe check out his house for the first time. And he was just like, actually, I'm just going to go back. Like, it's whatever. And I just kind of hung out with Kyle for the rest of the night. And I just don't get mad about that stuff with Ryan anymore. So it just kind of is what it is. I don't think it's malicious. I don't think there's anything behind it.
No.
He just is who he is. So I will say, though, I think the Woj thing, like, it's a subtle flex, but also, like,
yes,
if Woj is going to come to your house,
I think it's more than a subtle flex. I think it's an overt flex.
Yeah, you're right. It's just a straight in your face flex.
Right.
I actually don't think that's actually a legit excuse, because that's intel. That's his job. Like, he's got to get some intel from Woj.
All right. I am still here, if anyone's wondering.
Good life advice. Accept Russillo the way he is from Steve Cerruti. I'll take it. All right.
There were also games on that night. And when you come out,
this was mid-January. This was not NBA playoffs. This is mid-January. Wow. Saturday, January 10th.
Right. Well, there were games on. So. But yeah, if Woj and I had already made plans, then that's what's going to happen. And on top of it, your window when you're in LA is so small, and you don't want to come down to Manhattan Beach. You want to hang out up there. You want to do your movie thing. You're just going to meet and greet, take 1,000 selfies. And so you don't really want to do what I do. So if you'd said to me,
come over, watch it for an hour or two, I'm happy to do it. We'll watch some games. It'll be great.
I didn't want to. When Woj comes over, it's a very short list of people that I think I can make a third.
Because that's kind of what was inferred by it. Because Ben was like, well, he's watching games. I'm like, no, I don't think if he wanted to extend the invite, he would have said, Woj is coming over. Why don't you two make yourselves at home as well? Mosey on up. I think that's Woj and Ryan time, which I understood.
You can't be offended because if Lyons comes over and Woj is there, then it's just on, okay? And then you're in the background going, hey, did the Raptors give up on Malachi Flynn too early? And Woj is looking at me, and I go, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do this. So I think that was a legitimate one. The Cerruti one was, we did the live show, and I knew if I went to Shellbacks, it was the entire live show down the block. And then I was like, I'm going to be doing a second live show. So by the way, I didn't tell Cerruti, like, hey, you said you were going to come over to my house, and now I'm mad at you. You just go, hey, you want to do that? Okay, I want to do this. And we're all adults here.
Yeah. One more on Greeny, and Cerruti can chime in on this as well. So the Green Man discussed teases. Again, you were very praiseworthy in his teases, which were well documented. Some might argue a little overly inflated praiseworthy, but regardless, everyone always knew Greeny and teases were the...
Not that the teases are overrated, the documentation of such teases when it came to managers in particular.
Correct. Exactly. Mike is great at it. We agree on this. It was the discussion around it. The aura around the teases took on a life of its own, which raises the question.
The reason why I even brought it up, which I don't know that he loved. I think he may have taken from that he was like, are you saying I'm actually pretty much just above average, but teases have made me all of this money? Which I guess you could say the way I framed it, it could be taken that way. But he has to understand, and this is the thing that we all could do a better job of, but specific to working in radio during those years, you would sit with somebody in content or in management, and they would talk about his teases like Oppenheimer. And you would just go like, okay, they're really good. I agree with you.
Right.
But I also think there's a bit of a misleading and disappoint formula going on there.
Right.
Where eventually I just kind of go like, yeah, but that's not what you said 7 minutes ago. Like, this is a letdown.
What's the one thing you haven't realized about this Pacers series? Find out next.
That was really good.
And I think I knew the Knicks' lack of depth. I think that is the one thing I realized. Yep. I'm like, they're missing 4 of their top 8 players.
Yeah, right. Like, that's not, there's no mystery there.
We used to always say that Greeny's, and I love Greeny too. Like, he's incredible. It's great to talk to him. I haven't talked to him in a while. His best thing is he takes like B- content material, whatever, and turns it into A+ content material.
That is true.
He is the GOAT at that, and teasing is part of that.
I could just never understand, for being on the air 3 hours a day, I was like, do you guys care about anything else I say?
Well, I liked your point. You said you don't really care about the content. Like, I just gave you 10 great minutes, and all you care about is the tease, which raises the question I had for you. When you said the manager said that your teases suck, was that A, Scott Masteller, P, Trog Keller, or C, Dave Roberts?
Dave Roberts
is the answer.
No. Here's the thing is, Dave and I actually got along really well, and we had our disagreements. But what I liked about Dave is that I could tell him exactly how I felt, and he would tell me exactly how he felt.
Yeah.
And we could be men about it and go, whatever. All right, cool. Like, I disagree. I'll take that every day of the week over the other stuff where it's like, hey, we could tell Russillo the truth now, or we can make him really mad in a year.
Yeah.
And not tell him the truth for a year, and then we'll tell him the truth. And like, the chances of getting really upset are far greater. So let's do that instead.
Yeah.
It was Masteller.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Masteller at one point had told me on 3 separate shows to talk less. The baseball show?
Yes. Brevity really is your strength, Ryan. A little less out of you, much better for the audience.
4-hour baseball show. 4 hours. And he's like, talk less. I'm like, okay. Then College Game Days, a 7-hour radio show. 7 hours. They stopped doing it. Finally, I don't know if unions got involved, but they were like, how long is this show? I think I would have told them at some point, I was like, I knew if you're going to cut it back to 4 hours of pre-tapings, I might have stayed on it. I love doing that show, but I would get dumped every fall doing that show with whoever I was seeing.
Right.
They were like, are you serious? And he's like, why are you talking so much? I was like, we got 7 hours to fill. We do have 7 hours to fill. And then the all-timer with the beginning of Van Pelt, because they thought initially it's like, oh, this is just going to be a sidekick and he's going to have some zingers here and there. Like he won't be in on the interviews. And I was like, wait, what? That's not what I'm doing. That's not my plan. And look, to Scott's credit, he didn't look at it that way. I thought we were going to be hosts together. That was kind of the way I thought it was going to go. And then Matt Stiller told me, he goes, it's not that I want you to talk less. It's just that I want Scott to talk more. And I was like, can you say that out loud again? It doesn't. So, he's a nice enough guy. We get along all right. But yeah, he was, if he could have had posters of Greenie teases in his office, he would have been like, we should have these at the Disney store.
I liked Mike's point that he's read more reads than any human being in America over the last 25 years. That was incredible. Like, he's right. Like, to say you're the singular person more responsible for hawking more crap to Americans. No one's done it more than the Green Man over the last 25 years. And that was the key when you filled in. Did you get the reads in? Again, to your point, nobody cared about your content. Not one person. I thought Adnan's takes were pretty good. Thought his energy was great. Thought he worked well. No. Did you get the reads in? Progressive twice an hour. Subway Fresh Take Hotline. We're good to go.
I was blown away the first time I got a rundown from Mike and Mike. Liam hands me a stack of 15 pages. Like, some were pink, some were white. And I was like, all right, we having a pre-show meeting. Like, I'm here early. Let's go. What do you want to get into? And he's like, yeah. He's like, you have the rundown. I'm like, there's nothing here. There's no topics.
All vibes.
There's nothing. And he's like, yeah, the guys. I mean, that's also the brilliance of Greenie, that in a very short amount of time before the show, they could be like, okay, what happened? All right, Vikings come back. All right, great.
Yeah, 5:15, they'd walk in ready to go. Meantime, Cerruti's lost years of his life. He's there at 2:30 in the morning, stands like just worn out. The guys look like they're members of, they're like from Twilight. They just have the bags under their eyes. Like, Cerruti, that took years off. You look refreshed now, handsome as ever. That took years off your life doing that show. How long was it? 1.5 years, 2 years?
About a year on the dot. And I think every boss there could tell I was incredibly miserable. And I had a great time. Like, I got along with Greenie and Golick a ton.
Sure.
Especially, Greenie's a great dude. Like, we don't talk a ton now, but he's a nice enough guy where he remembers me and we talk about it all the time. It's great.
Yeah.
I tried to do the thing where I would split because I wanted to watch games. Like, I felt like an idiot going into the job the next day not having watched anything. So I would stay up until like midnight, wake up at like 3:15, 3:30, get in there for 4:15, and then sleep again for another 4 hours when I got home in the afternoon. So from like 1 to 4, 1 to 5. So I tried to do the split sleep thing for a good year. I have never been more of a zombie in my entire life. Couldn't do it. Couldn't function. Not for me. And there were times when, Ryan, it was like, hey, could you ever do the morning show? If they offered you the morning show, would you ever do it? I just don't think it's possible. Like, it's just because you would lose. Not only would you lose your mind from a health standpoint, but like you wouldn't be able to watch games the way that you watch games. And it's hard to do a 4-hour show with like kind of flying blind a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know how you do it if you have a family. And I remember talking with one of their managers because, like, again, everybody knows my deal. I'm a games guy. And when I did mornings in Boston, I split it in 2 days just to be able to watch games. It's an awful existence. And I probably would have still done it at that point in my life just for the ego if it were ever available. But I was not. That used to always be the carrot that they would dangle. Be like, oh, if Greenie moves on or Golick finally retires, because that was always like the thing of, if this happens or this happens, like you might be on the short list. And in the first 6 or 7 years I'm at ESPN, I'm thinking, like, could that ever one day be me, like on the biggest seat in the industry on ESPN? And from a lifestyle standpoint, I would never, ever want to do it again, but I could never do the job and not watch the games. Like, I used to show up at 4 for Mike and Mike, and they'd be like, what are you doing? Like, what are you writing down? I'm like, I'm writing down segments. Like, I'm looking up stuff. And I remember one of their managers, I go, do you ever get like any of the insiders who can kind of tell I don't know that it's feasible for them to watch with that schedule and having families and all the other stuff going on. And the manager's like, that's the brilliance of the show. He's like, that's the brilliance of the show, is that no one can tell that they're not watching as much as you would think. And I was like, You think no one? No one?
Golick would watch. Golick sleeps like he'd go to bed at 10 and get up at 4. So if it was like, hell, with the pitch clock now, he could watch a Yankees game, no problem. But he would, if it was like an 8 o'clock NBA game, he'd watch the first half and then go to sleep. So at least he had a semblance of it. He'd be able to say, okay, that was a key moment. But I'm like, yeah, but in a basketball game, that 11-0 run the second quarter may have been rendered moot by what happened in the fourth quarter. And then you're just trying to catch up with highlights.
Here's the point, though, is it doesn't matter. The job was to do the show, and they did it as well as anybody's done it in the industry for almost 2 decades. So all the extra credit that I used to think of that I would get when I was younger, nobody gives a shit. Like, no one. You know,
I thought it was a great show to pick and pop on, though. Like for you and me just to show up, it was great because you could feel the platform was bigger. Everyone was paying attention. Like, hey, this is, you know, a little pep in your step. Hey, man, little me roll here. I'm on Mike and Mike. So I agree with you. 5 days a week would be nauseating. But just to show up once in a while was a blast.
If you filled in on it twice, it ruined you for the rest. Like, you were better off going out on a bender in your late 30s. Okay, I'm not even talking about 40s, but like that later in life going, I'm not going to be right until Wednesday.
Yeah.
Just doing that show, you could always get through it the first one because you were so hyped and whatever. But if you went through that, if you did your normal gig, like for me, say a Monday, Tuesday, and then I filled in on Mike and Mike on like a Wednesday, Thursday, I was messed up for days because I just couldn't make it back up. You want to do any baseball?
Whatever you like. I also want, but for those who haven't listened to the episode, make sure you listen. But Ryan particularly told a little inside baseball. The no guardrails was great because they're
probably listening now, going, "Hey, Adnan, we did listen. We did listen."
Is your audience listening to every single episode? I don't know if they listen to every single episode. The research has shown they kind of dip in and out here and there.
Actually, my retention's one of the highest in the industry. I don't know what it is I don't know what it is right now, though.
It's dipped precipitously for this episode. Next episode, it's back again.
All right. I even have Soder follow-ups, but I do actually want to do some baseball.
Give me one Soder follow-up.
Well, okay. He didn't know who you were. Did you start right away with I used to work with Katie Nolan?
I mean, I thought that would be a natural way to get into it. And it was just like, no, like, okay. I thought you were great. And he was easily the funniest guy there. Like I'm telling you, the Cellar, me and my buddy Scott Spinelli, it's like 6 random people, right? I'm not sure if you're familiar with this or whoever knows. The Cellar's a place in Manhattan. You go there, you get tickets ahead of time. You don't know the guest list. They tell the day of and just go. And there's 2 people there who I'd seen previously who weren't particularly good. And it's this tight, cramped atmosphere. Soder came out at the end, killed it. Like I was not going with him. I'm sorry?
Comedy Cellar.
Comedy Cellar.
Yeah. I go every time I'm in New York.
And Soder killed, like far and away, Ryan, blew everybody else out of the, like he was awesome. I was like, this guy's great. Immediate follow on Instagram.
YouTube first time I ever saw him. He just rolled in. I saw Colin Quinn show up to like test stuff out there one night.
Colin Quinn was that too. Colin Quinn, great writer. One of the all-time great writers on SNL.
All right, let's do a little baseball because I have to use some of this prep.
Okay.
All right. Phillies 29-13.
Yeah.
Losing the NLCS last year, Arizona. We knew they'd be good coming back. The lineup, it's not even, I mean, it's nuts when you look at the depth of the lineup, and there's still a couple of guys that are probably not to where you'd expect them to be.
Yeah.
We know, look, between Wheeler and Nola, but Ranger Suarez is a completely different guy. So give me your Phillies take. I want to do some of the top teams here, the Phillies, on how much better they are this year than last year.
It's been a great story, man. I got lucky enough to go to spring training from MLB Networks. It was me and Jake Peavy. And the camps that we hit, we were at the Red Sox first, which was terrible timing because Giolito, they literally announced it that day. And Alex Cora is telling me, and of course, Alex and I go back to our time at Baseball Tonight. And he's supposed to be the ace of the team. I said, oh, man, that's miserable. So we go from the Red Sox, which was a funereal atmosphere. We go to the Twins, who couldn't be more upbeat. Royce Lewis, nicest guy in the game. God willing, one day he stays healthy, but he's such a great guy. Correa's great, Buxton's great, et cetera. Twins, all right, here go Twins, rally sausage. We got the Rays, we're always accommodating. And then we end up with the Phillies. And I was joking with the guys. I said, Phillies could be top. There's a lot of star power here. We might get big time. Instead, they could not have been more accommodating. Trey Turner, whatever you need. Zach Wheeler, awesome guy. Bryce Harper, as great as it gets. And Schwarber, of course, always accommodating. And Rob Thompson, I love. Great manager, fellow Canadian, a member of the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. Philadelphia, in the past, Ryan, they're a team that has been lurking in the regular season. And the playoffs, you go, watch out. They're 89-73. They're going to beat the Dodgers. This year might go the other way. They're on pace for a franchise record, 111 wins. This year, they might be Goliath as we're at a quarter mark of the year. And to me, when I look at their team, they have a ton of balance. They average 5.2 runs per game. That's second best in baseball behind only the Dodgers, just a fraction behind them. They are top 5 in runs, home runs, stolen bases, average, OBP, and slugging. And as you pointed out, The whole offense has yet to really get going. Castellanos had a miserable first month of the year. He's been better recently, but they've been carried by the likes of Alec Boehm and Brandon Marsh, guys you're more considered to be role players rather than the Schwarbers and the Harpers. Harper, his splits are really noticeable. He's great at the bank, of course, hitters park, not nearly as good on the road. Their ERA, starting rotation, 2.70, second best in baseball behind only your Boston Red Sox. The bullpen you might think is the weak link. The 4.52 ERA, 22nd in baseball, but they've been under 2 over the last 17 games. And I'm glad you mentioned Suarez specifically, because what's happened this year is because of some of the injuries, Spencer Strider being out, Garrett Cole not pitching for the Yankees, hopefully back around Memorial Day, you've had the door open to a bunch of starters who've been really good stories. And if you look at right now, the ERA leaders in baseball, it's stunning that like Shota Imanaga has a sub-1 ERA. His first 8 starts, he's been incredible for the Cubs. Javier Assad also very good. But Suarez is third on that list. And if you're a Phillies fan, you go, Zach Wheeler is unquestionably our ace. Aaron Nola, we gave $168 million to. He's our number 2. Ranger Suarez has like a 1.3 ERA, and he's our number 3 starter. Christopher Sanchez has also been brilliant. He's got like a 3.2 ERA. So for Philadelphia in the past, they've been a two-headed monster. Now they've got genuine depth in that rotation, and that's why they're feeling pretty good right now. And again, their bullpen, at times bullpens, as you and I both know, can be flammable. They can be volatile. You can have a great month. You can have a bad month. I'm not too worried about that. I think their offense, once they start clicking a little better, they're even more fearsome. But their starting pitching, to me, has been enormous. And that's one of the big edges they have right now over the prime competition in the NL.
All right, so the Dodgers, and I talked about this with Passan, when you looked at the depth chart and the available starters they could have at the end of the year versus the start of the year, it's just incredible. And they just keep adding to it. Buehler's been back. It hasn't been great in the first couple starts. Shohei has been everything, which is weird because I almost feel like he's doing exactly what you'd expect. But again, his teammate Mookie's been incredible. But like the Ohtani thing seemed to be all about the signing and then the scandal. And maybe it's just the April part of May and where baseball lives now. But he's been everything that you'd hope for. And you just think they have, even when things aren't working out for him, it just seems like they have endless options. And they'll have even more options in the second half of the year.
Well, Ohtani specifically, I was with Ron Darling yesterday, one of my favorite guys at MLB Network, and Ronnie was pointing out how funny it is. This guy was an MVP because he could pitch and hit like no one's ever done before, and now he could win the MVP as a DH in the National League. Like, let that sentence sink in. He's on pace for 104 extra base hits, 127 runs scored. No player has had over 100-plus extra base hits since 2001. So that's 23 years since this has happened. Also, you might think, coming off of the major injury and the surgery, that perhaps Dave Roberts will, kind of pick and pop as far as options when you use Ohtani. He's played virtually every game. So he's not even using any rest days. Monday is the 4th of 13 straight games without an off day. And he had lower back tightness. He left Saturday's game a little bit early, but otherwise he's been a gamer. So not only durable, but obviously very effective, and the numbers pointed that out. I would love to discuss Mookie Betts because you've got Betts, Freeman, and Ohtani. That 1, 2, 3 at the top lineup. You've never had that before, right? MVP, MVP, MVP. Betts as a shortstop, which they did out of necessity because Gavin Lux struggled in spring training. And immediately go, that's it, knee-jerk reaction. You're going from right field to second base where he played previously, where he's always taken grounders, always enjoyed playing second base, to now the shortstop. As you know, centerpiece of the diamond, this is a critical spot. And I remember people whispering, saying, okay, he might be an adequate shortstop, but he's no longer going to be a great defender. He's 5th right now in the majors in defensive runs saved. That's crazy to me. That is the most mind-boggling stat of this season. The fact this guy's gone from right field to second base to shortstop, and he's top 5 in defensive runs saved is extraordinary. Offensive, of course, he's gifted, and it continues to bash the ball, hits for power, has options. And Freddie Freeman's going to be 3rd in the MVP race because it feels like it's going to be Betts and Ohtani. You still got Max Muncy who can hit. You still have Will Smith, who's a great catcher, arguably the best catcher in the game. You mentioned the options. They'll have more with regards to their pitching staff. Their top 2 is great. Glasnow has never pitched more than 130 innings in a season. That's my concern with him. He's never been durable, but he's electric.
But he's lights out.
Right. But for a sport in which so many guys now throw so much when it comes to like cutters and sliders, et cetera, Glasnow's refreshing because he still throws his 4-seamer like 60% of the time. Like he's just throwing 98, go hit it. Yamamoto, awesome. Terrible first start. Didn't look good in the spring. He's been as advertised. He's a great number 2. And as you said, they'll get Kershaw back at some point. Walker Buehler is now back. I haven't seen a lot of guys come back from Tommy John twice, with the exception of Nathan Eovaldi, but maybe Buehler can be that guy. Their pitching will get healthy at one point. And again, they're going to be the best team in the West.
All right. So Houston at one point, I think, is 13-25. They won their last 2. And I was looking at something the other day. It's like, if you look at the entire season, I always think this is really important to do, is like look at all the teams that were pretty good that have had a brutal stretch. But generally, the teams that start like this end up never winning 70 games. And we know we can point to some of the hitting and some of the age stuff. They finally have 3 of their starters in the mix, with Valdez. Javier is in there, and then Verlander are together for like the first time since this weekend. But the bullpen is a disaster. And Hader, who it's funny how he was unhittable with the Brewers, then he had kind of like a weird stretch with the Padres. I don't know if this is just his weird stretch in a new setting, but this bullpen is dragging it down as much as everything else. But I just think as bad as the record is, like the Dodgers, they just have a bunch of options that you'd imagine they're going to figure out. So it's just really hard to write them off with this start.
I'm more cynical than you are. I know what you mean, that you look at their past history and their talent, but again, I'm looking at the past history of Major League Baseball. And as you point out, 10 games under 500 at a quarter mark of the season. There's literally 7 teams in baseball history that have come back from deficits like that in order to make the playoffs. Now, again, for much of Major League Baseball, there was not this many playoff teams. So it's different from looking at the 1914 Boston Braves, who came back from 10 games under to make the playoffs. But it's a significant hole. Now, what helps their case is the Mariners and Rangers haven't exactly run away and hid. So the Astros, and they have to look at the division. We're 6.5 games back on the division title. And what's that? 3 games back, 4 games back, a wild card spot. But here's what concerns me. They're starting pitching. The only guy who's been great is Blanco, of course, through the no-hitter. Verlander was great as last year against the Tigers. Vintage Verlander back at Comerica. Roughed up the previous time against the Yankees. Valdez has been up and down. You mentioned Javier's back. That helps. Hunter Brown, dreadful. Spencer Arrighetti, dreadful.
I think they had 3 guys set down from the rotation already.
Right. Like it's awful. And you mentioned the bullpen, which you thought would be a strength. Their bullpen ERA is a run higher this year than it was a year ago. That's demonstrable. If you're looking over the course of the season, if you're going to be a run higher than where you were. And Hader's not the same guy unless he's in a safe situation. I get that. But even in safe situations, he hasn't been lights out. ERA north of 5. Presley's not the same guy being a setup guy, and Abreu not the same as a 7th inning guy. You would have thought, Ryan, those 3 guys would be like the Yankees back in the day. It's like Stanton, Nelson, Rivera, 7, 8, 9. We got it locked down. Instead, it's gone the other way. Hasn't worked out. Do I think they'll be better? I do. But I do think when you dig yourself this big a hole, it's tough to climb out of it. Bregman's been a disaster. Yesterday, he had his first 2 home run game in a year and a half. That's crazy. Alex Bregman at one time was one of the better third basemen in the game. He's a free agent after this year. Jose Abreu was so bad. I didn't realize OPS Plus went negative. He was a minus 30 in his OPS Plus. Got sent down, as you said, the minors to spring training. Go figure this out. He's a guy who's been a supreme run producer for years with the White Sox. You thought he'd be good with the Astros, all that line of protection. He's been a disaster. They can still hit. Altuve's having a great year. Kyle Tucker's got 13 home runs. Yordan Alvarez is a great hitter. So they have talent. You're right. But I'm not so certain they can climb back in this thing. I think they're in trouble.
I just have a hard time believing the 3 arms, specifically Presley and Hader, are going to continue to pitch like this. And the fact that the top 3 in the rotation, are just together. And I think the division point's the strongest point. And if we look around at the rest of the divisions, like I always joke about the AL Central, like if you go over the years and what that team never does in the playoffs historically and how many teams are bad. And now it actually has like this incredible depth. And I don't know if that's real or not. So why don't you just take me through your AL Central takes before we go to the AL East?
Sure. The Guardians right now, they've got the best bullpen ERA in baseball, 2.43. Clase, to me, is a legit closer, as he always is. He's been fantastic, a flamethrower. The Twins, again, I got a soft spot for them because I got to hang out with Rocco Baldelli and those guys in the spring. The Rally Sausage, for those who are unaware, Ryan Jeffers had a summer sausage. They wrap it up. You touch the sausage, you go get a hit. Ever since they got the Rally Sausage, they've won 16 of 17 games. It's been a great story for them. What's odd with the Twins is, again, when healthy, you think they'd be formidable, but they haven't been healthy. Buxton perennially gets hurt, should be back this week. Correa missed time. I mentioned Lewis got hurt opening day. He's not back till early June. But Ryan Jeffers has been one of the better catchers in the game. He's 3rd in OPS, which is mind-boggling. Max Kepler has been amazing for them as well. And I love Pablo Lopez. For me, he's always in the midst of the Cy Young conversation. He's their ace. Joe Ryan's been pretty good. So Guardians and Twins, probably the top 2. Unless you're forgetting about the Royals. The Royals lost 106 games a year ago. They were atrocious. And this year they're being carried by 3 guys. There's only 3 guys in their offense of an OPS plus above 100. For those who are unaware, 100 is average. So if you're above 100, you're above average. 3 guys. Bobby Witt is in the MVP conversation. Sal Perez should be the starting catcher. And Pasquantino. Those are the 3 guys. Everybody else is below 100. So MJ Melendez, et cetera. These guys have been terrible. And yet they're there fighting for a division title, which, again, if you go from 106 losses to even a 500 team to have a plus 25 win improvement for KC would be mind-boggling. But Lugo's been amazing. Again, unheralded starters. You mentioned Ranger Suarez at the top. Lugo's top 5 right now in American League in ERA. Him and Michael Wacha together. People remember Wacha's name from 2013 in the Cardinals. And they've got a guy in Cole Reagans who's also a legit ace. So you put 3 legit starters there, 3 guys carrying their offense. I don't think that's sustainable. Tigers are a 500 team. I love Tarek Skubal. Again, one of the better pitchers in the game. Torkelson only has 2 home runs this year. Riley Green has to do too much to carry the offense. And the White Sox are bad. They're 12-29. They're a little bit better recently. Tommy Pham, since they signed them, they're above 500 team. But that's my central take. Probably Guardians and Twins. Royals are a good story, though.
Okay, AL East. I think when you looked at it going into the year, you thought the Red Sox would be worse. The ERA is absurd that it's the best in the majors considering the starting pitching that they've lost. But when you look at that lineup right now, you're like, who are these guys again? I mean, and they've dealt with a lot of injuries, and they're not scoring a ton of runs lately. I don't think the pitching is sustainable at all. Toronto feels like with this youth movement of the last couple of years, a bit disappointing. Now, granted, some of their starters have not been consistent enough, year to year, where you're like, okay, this is the top 3 guys in this rotation here. We knew Baltimore was coming. We saw it last year. They're stacked again. And then you have the Yankees revamping this bullpen on the fly. And then Clay Holmes with a 0 ERA and 17 innings pitched here.
Yeah.
And they're missing like 4 pieces from bullpen last year. So whatever the Yankees do with their bullpens, they figured out. I mean, Clay Holmes wasn't anything with Pittsburgh when they traded for him in 21. So it feels like Baltimore's the steadiest pick out of all of this. I think the Blue Jays continue to be disappointing. I think the Red Sox should be thrilled to even have this kind of record. And then you have Tampa Bay in there. So go any direction you want.
Start with a team close to your heart, the Boston Red Sox. I agree with you. They're probably going to be a 500 team. Again, the magic of Alex Cora and new pitching coach Andrew Bailey. Talked to Bailey in the spring, and he said to me, we're not going to focus so much on 4-seamers. We're going to throw more off-speed pitches. That's been his MO previously with the Giants.
So what is that? Because I was reading about that the other day, where it's just like if a company had a mission statement, the Red Sox would be throw less fastballs collectively, and it's working so far.
Yeah, what concerns me is that, as you and I both know, if you throw a fastball, I mean, that's the easiest pitch in your arms. That's why I love Glasson, just throwing 98. Like, great, nice and easy. Whereas if you're throwing a lot more pitches, like Lance McCullers famously threw like more off-speed pitches. I think he threw his fastball like 42% of the time over a 3-year stretch. Hasn't been the same guy, of course. He's been hurt perennially with the Astros, but he had a great run. Of course, McCullers, great curveball, slider, cutter, et cetera. So Bailey's just felt like, you know what, this is going to be our approach. And so far it's working. What's again, one of the bigger shockers in the game, the Red Sox are the best starting rotation in baseball. Like, that is not a misprint. Nobody expected that. Tanner Houck, I was watching yesterday, Jake Peavy pointed out, when he throws the ball, it's like he shot puts it. It's such a fun pitch to watch. And he shot puts it in terms of his delivery. Coming into yesterday, 1.75 ERA, second in the American League. Nobody's expecting that from Cutter Crawford with a K. My man Pivetta, fellow Canadian, was okay, hurt a little bit, but he'll be fine. Tanner Houck, a revelation. Been fantastic for them. So you go, wow, I thought the Red Sox had no pitching, and all of a sudden they've got 3 guys there, and you throw in Brian Bayo, who some call a baby Pedro, all of a sudden we got something cooking. What's shocking for Boston is they can't score. Their offense is dreadful. They're averaging 2.9 runs per game in May. That's the 3rd worst in baseball behind only the Reds and the Cardinals. Vaughn Grissom's hitting $140. Willie Abreu's not doing much after a hot start. Tyler O'Neill went deep yesterday after carrying the offense. He hadn't done anything for a couple of weeks. Devers is still great. Last 16 games, he's hitting .367. But it's odd for your Red Sox because they have right now legit starting pitching. The problem is their offense, which has been lackluster. As you said, I don't think it's sustainable. Like, they're probably a 500 team. Jays are very worrisome. BetMGM's got John Schneider as the manager, most likely to be fired, because with this collection of talent, they're dead last right now in the division. Critical win yesterday. I'm telling you, if ever a May game felt critical, it did against Baltimore at Camden Yards against Van Pelt's Orioles. The Jays win 3-2. You mentioned the starting pitching has been suspect. One guy who hasn't has been Barrios. Aside from one start, he's been outstanding for the Blue Jays. 7 strong once again yesterday. Problems are offense. Springer's hitting .205. Bo Bichette has a .570 OPS. That's the 7th worst in baseball. That can't happen if you're one of the stars of the team. Vlad Jr. has been a little bit better recently, but much like Boston, they really struggle to score runs. So if it's not Bo, Vlad, and George Springer, the rest of these guys are basically role players. Alejandro Kirk is what he is. Davis Schneider's going to get a couple of hits, Kevin Bijou, et cetera. You can't expect that team to be strong. So I think it's going to be challenging. And really, under the radar, Jays have the worst bullpen ERA in baseball, 5.15. Romano's a good closer. After that, it's shaky. Rays, I think ultimately the injuries are catching up to them. Here's a stat which will surprise you. The Rays, normally fundamentally strong, second worst in baseball in defensive runs saved. They do not field the ball well.
I'm surprised.
And they've obviously missed their pitchers with Shane McClanahan. And, eventually you figure the Rays magic would run out. So I think it's Yankees and O's. And the O's are incredible. I mean, talk about a team that's fun to watch with Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson. Henderson was my pick for MVP. I said, how about a little Cal Ripken magic? Henderson won Rookie of the Year last year. He'll win MVP this year, and the O's win the World Series. Exactly what Cal Ripken Jr. did. Rookie of the Year, was MVP, won the World Series. Who knows if that'll happen? Rutschman's obviously a great catcher. We know about their talent. What's crazy is like a guy like Ryan O'Hearn, who's like a platoon player, hits third in their lineup. Santander is great. And Corbin Burns has been a legit ace. That's transformed that rotation, I think. Once you get that pillar who everyone can look to as your legit ace, all of a sudden that makes things easier for Kyle Bradish and the rest of the starters. Grayson Rodriguez is obviously a flamethrower. I worry a little bit about their bullpen, Ryan. Craig Kimbrell, I don't like, listen, Kimbrell is very volatile. And by losing Bautista, that was a big miss to me, signing Kimbrell to replace him. But they have options. Yunier Cano can close. They have other guys. And the Yankees, I'm glad you mentioned their bullpen. It's been elite. Holmes has been awesome. Our boy Booney knows how to pull the strings. Caleb Ferguson and others have been really strong. Soto, to me, is the MVP. He's been one of the best stories in baseball. At times, I've been critical of him. I think he's too patient. He hasn't been that way at all. He looks for his right pitch. He does damage with it. His slugging is off the charts. He's leading the majors, as always, in on-base percentage. Stanton looks healthy and better. Judge, slow start, now looking better. Volpe had a great start, cooled off a little bit, but I think the Yankees are awfully good. And to think they're doing this without Garrett Cole, like Rodon appears to have figured it out after a horrible year a year ago. He's been significantly better. Clark Schmidt grinds it out. I've been impressed how well the Yankees have played.
Last baseball thought here. You think this is the year that Jurickson Profar puts it together?
I don't think so. I remember years ago working on SportsCenter, and I can't remember the researcher now. It might have been my buddy John Fisher. Profar was having a hot start. And I said, Profar, so good. And I go, no, we're not doing that.
Profar, so good. I like that.
Profar, so good. But I said, shut up to my boy Fish. But Jurickson Profar is not going to put it together this year. The guy I'm really happy for, though, is Joe Adell. Joe Adell was a first-round pick years ago. I said, I'm so happy because I have all these Adele songs. I can use Joe Adell, Hello, It's Me, Joe Adell, Rolling in the Deep. And then he stunk for a few years. He disappeared. He's having a great bounce back here. He might be the all-star representative for the Angels this year. So Joe Adell, keep it going.
Have you thought about pivoting to just trying to honor Berman by being the guy? No one will think that you invented it, but
correct.
Just to keep it going. I think you could pull it off. I don't think there'd be any necessary criticism. It's just it's understood. Hey, I'm just going to keep the Berman thing going, and it's fine.
What was always funny is you and I grew up on SportsCenter in the 90s. We loved all those guys. Whoever was your favorite, whether it was Boomer or Keith Olbermann, Dan Patrick, Stuart Scott, Rich Eisen, et cetera. And then when I worked on it, they said, hey, I would throw in some catchphrases. And they'd go, hey, that's very 90s SportsCenter. I'm like, yeah, that's what I grew up watching and loving. They're like, we kind of stopped doing that. I'm like, what? I didn't get the memo. I don't know. So they're allowed to show personality. We are not. I'm like, okay, got it. So I don't know, man. As long as we can get a chuckle to somebody. I asked Olbermann at one time. It was a Neil Everett story I told to Keith. When I first met Neil Everett, when I was filling in on SportsCenter in LA for Stan Verrett, I told Neil, I said, I'll always be a fan of yours. Because years before I was in America, my brother lived in Peoria, Illinois. And he heard you say on a home run call, he'll take him across the street to Mitch and Murray. And my brother called me and goes, oh my God. I go, yeah, Glengarry Glen Ross reference. That's incredible. What's this guy's name? He goes, Neil Everett. So when I met Neil, and he goes, that's so funny you mentioned that. He goes, the first time I said that, the coordinating producer turned to me and goes, what's that? And I said, it's from a movie. They go, I wouldn't use it. He goes, what? He goes, it's from Glengarry Glen Ross. He goes, no one's going to know what it is. And no one's going to get it. And Neil's response was, I get it. And I repeated that story to Keith, and KO said, yeah, he goes, nobody's ever watched a sportscast and said, I'm not sure what that reference is. I'm going to go watch something else. You're still going to find out the Cubs won 3-2. If you can entertain yourself and a few others along the way, good for you.
Nobody's going to get it. Yeah, I know. But right. The thing is, the reward for the few people that get it, that's the fun of it all.
Right.
And I don't know. This is kind of funny how it came full circle, because usually we were going to screw around at the end, but we screwed around for such a long time at the beginning of it, which I do enjoy, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm a little cautious with this. Do we have anything in the creative field that you want to touch on here? Because we can't.
I
can't talk about it.
No, two things. One, I'll do the silly one in a second. On a serious note, I want to shout out my crew at MLB Tonight. We're nominated for an Emmy for Best Daily Studio Show. The Emmy Awards are next Tuesday. It's going to be the first time I'm ever going to the Emmys. I don't think we're going to win. We're up against 4 ESPN nominees for Best Daily Studio Show. I believe SportsCenter will win. Might be PTI. The other nominees, according to BetMGM, I think we're running third. We're up against NBA Countdown and NFL Live. So I'm looking forward to that. I wanted to salute my awesome team, our producers, our researchers, our graphics people, our directors. They do an incredible job. So I cannot wait to go and support MLB Network and MLB Tonight specifically getting nominated. I texted Van Pelt because Scotty's up for nomination. Hey, I'll see you at the Emmys. No response. So again, life advice to you. Has he changed his number or does he know it's me and he's big time, maybe?
Yeah, you got big time.
He has not changed his number, right? He has not changed the last 10 years. This will be a great moment when I see him. Like, hey, man, I asked Russillo. You haven't changed your number. Here's the text. Huh?
Yeah, that's a tough look. Was he usually?
He was responsive previously. Absolutely. Post ESPN, he was responsive. He was a first responder. He was responsive previously. But I'll send along your best. Well, I did want to end on a silly note.
Well, we can agree on. To me, so I don't need you to do that.
Yeah. Well, what we could close on this, which something we both agree on. We both love Killers of the Flower Moon. We also both hated Saltburn. So for anybody out there listening who thinks Saltburn's a good movie, Russillo and I are here to tell you, it's absolute dreck. If ever there was a movie pretending to be a good movie with Saltburn, and thank God the Academy. People like to crap on the Oscars and take shots at them. That movie got 0 Oscar nominations because it is worthy of 0 recognition. It was pitched as one of these Oscar baits, like, oh my God, it's dangerous, it's risky, might win for another Best Screenplay nomination. How about the work that Barry Keoghan is doing? That feels like a Best Actor nomination. No. The voters watched and said, this movie stinks. It's a turd impersonating the talented Mr. Ripley. Thumbs down on Saltburn, which you and I agree on.
Soundtrack was good.
Soundtrack's good. Good last song.
Songs back into the rotation if you're out in that scene.
Yeah.
I didn't. The thing I enjoyed the most about Saltburn is the grave scene, where somebody was explaining like the art behind it, where it was like, I wanted it to be a closed set, and I wanted Barry to just go wherever he needed to go, and then once he thought he went too far, like break through that. And honestly, like, if you didn't see the movie and you feel left out, spoiler alert, he sticks his dick into the soil of the grave.
He's a grave humper.
Yeah. And you're like, okay, I'll give you, if you want dangerous, I'll give you dangerous. And there was someone on social media that's in the business, which this is incredibly rare for anybody to be in the world of Hollywood, to be like super critical and like in a quote tweet to just go right at it. And so as a story was being explained about that scene, this guy's like, yeah, that's why as a director, you can also just say no sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like cutting. So yeah, that was
there's a scene of a guy masturbating in a tub, and when the water goes down, the guy runs and slurps up the water like that.
Yeah, right. All right.
Spoiler alert. Okay.
Well, no, I'm not even talking about spoiler alert.
You're just disgusted by the imagery that I just called it.
Yeah, and every now and then, we'll get some complaints on the swearing that I do on the pod, and that's just far more
obscene.
It was one of those. What do you got for us? What's something new? What's something new?
No, there's you know what? I got a book review for you. I love to read. How about this? Giamatti's podcast, which I love. It's called Chinwag. I mentioned it. I don't know why I'm doing his work for him. Don't make eye contact. I'm not nearly big enough for Paul Giamatti, but I met him. He was awesome. He could not have been nicer. I was like, dude, I'm such a fan of Paul Giamatti. I'm so happy the Holdovers got recognized. That's his first Best Actor nomination. You like the Holdovers, right?
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, all right.
I know I like it though. I know that I'll like that. That's kind of up my alley. And
Alexander Payne, you're a fan of. We've definitely discussed Alexander Payne previously.
It's not even a debate.
Favorite Giamatti movie? Because I sort of thrown at him American Splendor.
And, it's Sideways. Yeah. It's Sideways. And what I love about Sideways is my own personal relationship with the movie, in that I was like, when I was young and it came out, I'm like, this blows.
Really? You didn't like Sideways?
I didn't really get it. I didn't get it. And it's the kind of movie that as you get older and you go through some of your own things where you're just like, whoa, like this thing hits. That movie hits you. And it's one of my all-time favorite movies. And his character's perfect for it. But I also love his friend.
Yeah. Thomas Hayden Church playing Jack. Incredible.
I love that character. I love the development of the character of the person that got a taste of it that's more haunted by ever having a taste of it than the person that never did.
Yeah.
Like, I just always really liked that character, not even specific to Sideways. It's like, are you better off just never knowing what it was like to have that life?
It makes you think of child actors, right? You peak when you're 10.
Yeah, that's the same, but I still think it's different, because the child actor, I think you can, despite, its own trauma that seems to be pretty prevalent in that path, I think there's something of like being an adult and being successful in your 20s and 30s. And then, like, on the other side of 40 towards 50, you're like, it's over. And that guy can be the most annoying human being of all time.
Yeah.
Because it's like, hey, I'm right around the corner. And then again, who's anyone to tell that person that it's over? Right? No one should tell that person that it's over. But that movie, man, I love that movie. And Giamatti's great in it. It's just an awesome story. It's an awesome script. I know the whole backstory behind the whole thing, like when the script, everybody was kind of freaking out about the script. And it's an awesome story.
Clooney wanted to do it. Brad Pitt was going to do it at one point, like big stars. And Payne was like, no. They go, we'll give you $40 million. He goes, no, I like Giamatti and Hayden Church. I'll do it for $8 million. It's not going to work with those guys in the movie.
Yeah, he was right.
I said to Giamatti, I said, listen, man, last thing, I went for a few minutes and I said, hey, everyone always quotes the Merlot line. I said, the best line? He said, what's that? I said, when you go in the store and say, can I get a copy of Barely Legal? He goes, no, the new one. And Giamatti starts cracking up because that's a pretty good one.
The new one. Good luck at the Emmys, man.
Thanks so much, Ryan. I appreciate it. Book review real quick. Giamatti recommended it. So Giamatti reads like you. He's
by the way, just for the audience to understand, as I said, hey, good luck at the Emmys, this look on Adnan's face, it's like, I'm not done.
No, I got to get the book review in. Giamatti, he's like you, voracious reader. He reads 3 books a week. So he's with a guy named Stephen Asma, philosophy professor. The podcast is called Chinwag. And he said he'll read a lot of science fiction. What's a science fiction book everybody can read? What's one that's accessible? So Giamatti said The Lathe of Heaven. It's by Ursula K. Le Guin. It came out in 1971. I picked it up at my local library. 184 pages. It's fantastic. I don't think I've ever read a science fiction book. I don't believe I've read Isaac Asimov or Philip K. Dick and the major ones. This book is amazing. I recommend it to you highly. The Lathe of Heaven. And I want to read this blurb from Michael Chabon. When I read The Lathe of Heaven as a young man, my mind was boggled. Now when I read it more than 25 years later, it breaks my heart. Only a great work of literature can bridge so thrillingly that impossible span. Check it out.
And the best part, for those not able to see the video here, which is primarily everyone, it is from the library, and it has the library protection cover on the book itself. It is incredible. Our man is going to the library. He's checking out books that Paul Giamatti recommends to him, The Lathe of Heaven. Thank you, my cultured and well-rounded friend.
I appreciate it, Ryan. Seriously, congrats on the podcast. Congrats on your success. I'm always listening. Congrats on the writing. Hopefully we'll hook up soon. Cerruti, always a pleasure, man. Go Magic.
Hey, I may have good news on one of those fronts for you, but I can't share it on the pod yet. So I'll
really?
Let you know.
Okay.
Yeah. The biggest thing so far, but
that's great, man.
There's a lot of stuff that has to happen, and for all those fuckers out there that want to ask me how the writing's been going to fuck with me, maybe we'll have an update for you.
Well, I love when you sent me the script. There was one, I don't want to discuss too much of it, but the script that you sent to me, and you go, you'll like it. And I liked it. It was excellent. Seriously, it was a legit, well-written script. I know how hard you work at it. So I hope that good news is coming.
If I sent you a script that sucked, I don't think you would tell me it would suck, though. You would be everyone's favorite agent until like a couple years in and be like, the guy likes everything. He doesn't know how to tell people the writing sucks.
What I would do is What I would do is they have an element of truth to it. But I would do a compliment sandwich. I go, here's what I liked about it, Ryan. I like the characters, this dialogue. I'm not totally sure. Not sure about the third act. Might have gone for a different ending, but overall, I liked what you were going for. That's what I would do.
Yeah. Don't compliment sandwich people if you don't like anything that they did. That's not a compliment. We're not idiots. If you've been around with the compliment sandwich enough, you know where it's coming.
I don't think so. I think most people fall for the compliment sandwich. Like,
we're all just such egomaniacs. You're like, I like 2 out of 3.
That's what I'm banking on.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, man. Good to see you.